at the Radboud University. She has 2 degrees. One in Pedagogic Sciences, it's a heavy word, with specialization in adoption. And she has another one in Cultural Anthropology, with specialization in women, gender, and development. She has worked as a coordinator for the Vereniging Wereldkinderen. That's the Association of Worldchildren. It's a popular adoption agency or something like that. It's an NGO actually for child welfare and inter-country adoption in The Hague. Well, you know, it is reasonable to suppose that any decision pertaining to whether to keep an unborn baby or not is a major one, and it needs to be carefully considered. Today, we would like to understand better through the eyes and the ears of a specialist who has researched these situations and has also worked with an adoption agency. So with this, I would like to welcome Dr. Pien Bos to the studios of Radio Voice of Naija. Welcome. Shall I call you Dr. Bos or Pien? Which one do you like?
Pien is fine.
Pien is, how do you say it?
Pien.
Pien, oh.
Yeah,
Oh, we can say Pien. Pien, that's the name.
Pien also sounds very nice.
Thank you. You came all the way from, what's the village again?
Noorderloos.
Noorderloos. Okay,
Wow.
all the way. She traveled more than an hour to be here, so she made special effort. Please, I want you to appreciate her and appreciate her being on the show this morning.
Yes.
Well, in the first place, Pien, what brought you into researching issues relating to women with unplanned pregnancies and child adoption? What brought you into this field?
Well, it's maybe it will make it clear to start at the beginning when I finished my studies.
Yeah.
I just was searching for a job and I saw an advertisement in the newspaper in the organization Wereldkinderen you just mentioned.
Yes.
And I thought in those days that adoption is a very nice win-win situation. Many children are left behind.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have parents, and many people like to have children, so they're searching for children. And this is 1 + 1 is 3, I thought. This is a very nice win-win situation.
Yeah.
And most people in those days were thinking like this.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to work with a lot of enthusiasm in this organization. I did not actually did adoption matching or the straight work. I was working to coordinate all the volunteers working in those organizations, giving them trainings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I was working there for a couple of years, and more questions raised in my mind. We had a lot of information about the adoptive parents. We had quite some information how these adopted children were doing within the families here in the Netherlands, for instance.
Yes.
But nobody was raising questions about the other side, about the biological family. Why are these children relinquished? What is the reason behind? They had some information like statements like, okay, these are unmarried mothers, that is a social stigma, or for some countries these children were taken from parents because they were not capable, or they were supposed to be not capable to take care of these children, so that the parental rights were withdrawn, or sometimes even poverty was a reason. But it always fitted in a nutshell. Nobody asked straight from the biological parents what happened.
Why they were giving up the children for adoption?
Exactly, the decision-making process, which factors are pushing them into this irrevocable decision, because once you have relinquished, it's forever.
It's forever.
Wow.
Wow. Well, it's a very deep, thought-provoking subject, in fact.
Yeah, so I was working in this organization, and more questions raised in my mind. And I got in trouble there. I really thought the focus should be on this biological family. It's also in the Hague Convention, which is a very big agreement, or important agreement, about how the adoption process should be. And there is this conviction that a child belongs to the biological family, and if there's a possibility to stay within the biological family, that's the first solution for a child, or first aim to leave the child there.
Yeah, for this to get your interest, how many, just to have an idea what was going on when you're working there, how many children were adopted within a certain period, maybe 6 months or within a year? I mean, what was the rate, the frequency of the adoption?
Oh, I'm not so very good in these statistics,
but roughly, if we give us an idea.
The rates are dropping down now, I know. The inter-country adoption all over the world is getting down. But in those days, in the 90s, well, I think more than 1,000 children were coming per year to the Netherlands, and that's only the Netherlands. Yeah, and all over the world, children are floating to many Western countries. Yeah, but well, these questions raised my mind, and finally I couldn't work there anymore, and I wrote a research proposal, and I got funded by the Dutch government and the Ministry of Justice and NWO, which is a fund. And well, I picked up my family and we left to go to the south of India. And there I did 2 years of field work while my husband was fathering the children.
But why did you choose? Why did you choose, I beg your pardon, to go to your research in India? Why India?
Yeah, that is because while I was in this adoption agency, there were some discussions and doubts about some sending countries. Like, for instance, is poverty a good reason to relinquish a child? This discussion was already there in the 90s.
Yes.
And also, for instance, Colombia was sending children for adoption from parents who who had withdrawn their parental rights. So that's not their own decision. It's not a relinquished decision.
No.
These children were taken from them.
By force.
Taken by force, yeah. Because, I mean, serious problems are there if your children are taken also in Colombia. But there were some discussions like, is this a right way to solve this problem, bringing these children abroad? But for India, there were never discussions. In India, the reason was mentioned as, well, these are unmarried mothers. Unmarried motherhood is a very heavy social stigma in India. Really? Also, being a child from an unmarried mother is a very heavy social stigma. So this was a very, almost convenient
way of dealing with the problem.
Yeah, exactly. So no questions were raised, and that's why I got a little bit suspicious. Yeah.
Wow.
Jesus.
It is. Now, here in the Netherlands, to what extent is there a need for adoption? Are there, okay, for us in the migrant background, maybe our social networks, in a way, provide a good support for a situation whereby a young lady becomes pregnant and is unmarried, so somehow we're able to cope with these things. I don't know how familiar are you with it? You know, the situation in terms of people who have children and not have to place them for adoption. Can you tell us a bit about what you know regarding this in the Netherlands? Perhaps you can speak from the Dutch society, and also what you know about the migrant community here. Yes.
Well, I think about the migrant community here, you know more than I do. But I know that from the demand side, many couples in the Netherlands and also in other, let's call it, rich countries, like to have children. And this demand side gets stronger and stronger and pushes also towards on the supply side. And I was very curious during my research whether this push also reached the decision-making process of the biological mothers. And this was, how we call it, a sensitizing concept for me, how it sensed me while listening to these mothers. Because I was not blanco going into the field. I had my own observations here on the demand side. And even in India, I was searching for unmarried mothers, of course, who relinquished children, but I was also talking or listening to mothers who were unmarried and yet raising their children. Because also in India, like you mentioned, in the migrant community here in the Netherlands, if I understand you correct, we take care of our children ourselves.
Yeah, in a way, yes. We have a way of supporting unwed mothers, you know, people who became pregnant, unprepared, stuff like that. We have a way of dealing with that. It's not a nice situation, but when it does happen, we have our social networks are able to support these people until they find their feet.
Yeah.
So although of course there's some stigma about it, but it's not so bad that the unwed mother becomes rejected and becomes an outcast. You know, we don't. So I've noticed that at least from Africa, where I come from, and also even some from South America, like the Suriname community, there are a lot of unwed mothers. Okay, but again, somebody becomes pregnant unprepared. It's never cast out. The family has a way of supporting that person, you know, to get back to her feet and to continue as usual. And then even the child which gets born later on is helped in a way. But it's not the same in some places like Colombia, as you mentioned, and even in India, which is really quite pathetic.
Well, in India, the cultural meaning of sexuality outside of marriage is quite heavy. I mean, that may be different from your country.
Yes.
And also the cultural meaning of marriage is very important.
It's very important. You know, in India, I think there is when the woman gets married, the woman has to pay a bride price. It's usually a big one, and so there's a very special, I believe, meaning to marriage. And so when somebody gets pregnant outside of marriage, then of course it's a serious problem. It's a disgrace.
It's very complex. It has to do sometimes with dowry, also with purity. And there's a lot of cultural meanings on sexuality outside of marriage, which is stigmatizing. But even in India, I was searching for unmarried mothers who raised children outside of marriage. And also in India, people are very capable to find a solution. And once you organize an institution like adoption, people will use it. And if this is not there, this solution, people will manage in a different way.
I'm just curious, how has your research contributed to your understanding of the situation here in Holland? And has it given you some solutions or some tips regarding how adoption can be better improved, or how the win-win situation can be improved, you know, for everybody?
Well, I think the inter-country adoption, how it is organized worldwide now, has very reverse incentives. So the financial component is very strong. And that's how it developed the last couple of decades. And
go on.
And maybe adoption as a solution for an individual child and for an individual couple may be very nice and work out very well. But the system as a whole, I'm very much worried about, because these incentives, these financial incentives, are more perverse incentives are there.
Okay, I guess you want to explain that clearly to our listeners. What do you mean by? You mean the system is gotten a bit sour, or not so really, it's not serving the purpose that we're supposed to? Can you tell us what's wrong with the system that we're operating?
Well, there is a lot of money going from rich countries to poor countries, and there are babies or young children coming from poor countries to rich countries, and there is a need here.
Yes.
I mean, there is a strong, huge demand for children. And, well, the Hague Convention is trying to get things into control, but I did my research in India, and in India I only did research within the legal, the proper legal adoption field. So I didn't go into this illegal
side of things.
Yes, and even in this legal procedures, I could see how mothers are influenced, very implicit. I mean, you can't control this. The way of counseling, the way of not giving information is very hard to control.
Wow. Now, so in your work, you speak of the issue of a foster home for the children, and also for the adoption, the demands for adoption. Now, can you explain to our listeners exactly what's happening here? There was an issue you mentioned in your research in India about the foster home for the children, and also about the the mothers that are they're giving the babies away. Something was going on there. I don't know whether it was political or what. Can you explain what really happened?
Well, that's also part of the system I'm talking about. Once a mother has an unplanned pregnancy in India, she will, for instance, go to a family planning center for an abortion. In India, abortion is very a low threshold. So, but once she is beyond the period to have a legal abortion, sometimes this solution is raised, like, okay, you can also go to a short stay home, stay there, and relinquish your child after delivery. And then she will enter a short stay home.
That's a shelter.
A short stay home is a shelter, yes. But usually this is connected to an adoption agency, because the child is relinquished and will go for adoption. That's the intention also for her to go there. But this adoption agency has also
some interest.
Exactly. But that's the same here. I mean, also the adoption agencies in Western countries have interest to place as many children as possible, even though their policy may mention that it has to be the child's interest, and well, statements like that. They do exist because they are capable to place children for adoption, and that's where they get the money from.
Okay. So how much money really exchanges hands, in the process of somebody wanting to adopt? Give us a rough range, a rough idea.
Well, I'm out of the adoption agency for quite a while, but I know it's around 15,000 or 20,000 euros.
So a parent who wants to adopt should be prepared to pay something like this in order to adopt a child. From a child coming from overseas to the Netherlands, for example. Wow. Well, listeners, you are following right now a discussion with Dr. Pien Bos, who's a specialist. He's done a special study on unplanned pregnancy and child adoption. He's an expert in these matters, and we invite you to give us a call on 020-737-1619 if you have a question for her or remark regarding the topic under discussion. And so we will be taking a short break, and we will come back soon.
Is it okay?